I appreciate being here. And first off to Jennifer and to David and to Lois and to Mentors for College. At the end of the day, my message is exclusively my opinion. But one thing that I have noticed in 20 plus years is I think I'm onto something. I think a lot of the education that we'll share tonight, and that's all it is. It's an education that we'll share tonight, and it's going to require class participation. In fact, I'll ask right away, show me the students' hands, and not the half like kind of out here. Okay, good. You'll be involved. So backtracking a tiny bit, I'm a Major League Baseball agent, as it says on the sheets in front of you. As Jennifer pointed out, I was literally just in the corner texting with one of my Yankees players about something, and I just flew in from New York and was heading back to California tomorrow. Instead, I am turning around and going back to New York to have lunch with one of my Yankees players who made his Major League debut yesterday. So I do try to balance my time. Obviously, my job is to be an agent, to guide the careers, I suppose, of players at the major league or minor league level. But at the end of the day, about 5 years ago, I started to think, how did I get into this position? How did I make a career in the world of baseball? And it came down to one common denominator, and it was the college I selected. Not the baseball program that I played at for 4 years that I selected, but rather the college I selected. And in that self-reflection, I started to realize that nothing has really changed in 25 years. The process that existed back in the early 90s is no different that exists today. But I will tell you what is different. That seemingly on every street corner out there, somebody is trying to sell you a service. Somebody is trying to tell mom and dad that your son and daughter needs to sign up with their organization to get better, to get bigger, to get faster, to get smarter, and most ridiculously, to ensure that you will play college athletics. There are a lot of smart people in this room. And I would hope that as a group, you did not make your son or daughter's decision of where they should go to school based on some coach, I don't care to the sport, at some NAIA school in Iowa who told you you can start as a sophomore because they need a goalie. And oh, by the way, your $150 or $200 or $250,000 four-year investment, the decision was made off of a coach that told you something that they went out and told 25 other people. We need, as a group, as a society, to be more responsible, to be more accountable, and make better decisions for these young men and women. Now, that is probably the most modest, probably the least animated I will be, because now you're going to start seeing me get fired up. Now you're going to start seeing me speak a whole lot faster, and you're going to see me at sometimes yelling at mom and dad, because I will be yelling at mom and dad. I'll tell you who I'm not going to yell at. I'm not going to yell at these men and women. I'm not going to yell at these student athletes because they have a job to do. Their job, very frankly, is to be the best athletes on the field they can be. Their talent will plateau. They will only get so good. But that's okay, because you can't measure heart and you can't measure commitment. And so they have to go out and give 110% on the playing field, on the practice field. That is their first responsibility. Their second job is to take that same 110% effort and actually use it in the classroom, in the study halls, in the prep, ACT, SAT courses. That is their second responsibility. Their third is to get off of the campus, to get off of the field and the court, and actually be a productive member of society, to volunteer. Special needs, elderly. I don't care what you choose to do to get involved out there, but you can only play so much Fortnite in your basement. You have to do more than just be an athlete and just be a student. But that is their job. And they should shoot for the stars and try to get a Division I scholarship. I wanted a Division I scholarship. I'm sure there are a lot of mom and dads who also wanted a Division I scholarship. But at the end of the day, Every Division I program out there, I don't care the sport, knows who the premier Division I eligible players are. And for us as a group chasing this white whale unicorn called a Division I scholarship, you are doing a disservice to your son or daughter. Because if your phone rings, if that coach stops you in the parking lot, knocks on your door and says, we want you to come visit our Division I school and there might be a financial opportunity attached to it, great. It now becomes a business decision because you would be paid to go to that school. And I'm going to argue tonight and show you this evening that even if you were to get an opportunity to have a scholarship at the Division I level, it still might not be the right choice. I'm going to prove this with a question where every student athlete here has to answer to option A or option B. Option A. Coach says to you, you have made our team. Here's your uniform, but there's the end of our bench. We're a Division I program, okay? You're not on scholarship, but you're never going to see the floor or the field as a freshman or a sophomore. We'll give you some garbage time. As a junior, we'll throw in a token start as a senior. But you are here to be a practice player and make our starters better. That's option A. Option B is, we think you're going to come in and compete as a freshman. Start as a sophomore. By the time you're a junior, you're in the lineup every day. And by the time you're a senior, you might be an all-time record holder, might be a captain, but it's a great 4-year on-field experience. Who's taking option A? Who's taking option B? Unanimously, these student athletes told me they want to play Division II, Division III, and NAIA. There wasn't one student here that just told me that they want to play Division I. And so, I have to ask, who wants to play Division I more? The student or the parent? Because I've been here for less than 10 minutes, and every one of these young men and women told me they want to play D2, D3, and NAIA. Where are the priorities? And that's a question for mom and dad. I'll be honest, this presentation is really for mom and dad. I hope the students hang in there. I hope they listen. I trust they're going to learn something. But stats don't lie, and we're going to go through a few of them right now. Listen for your sport, because these are the percentages of the high school athletes that go on to play for a men's or women's Division I team. Less than 3% for football, water polo, field hockey, lacrosse, golf, swimming, track, soccer, and cross country. Less than 2% for baseball, softball, and tennis, and less than 1% for basketball, wrestling, and volleyball. Any ice hockey players here? None? You're at 5%. You would have had the best chance, but we don't have any ice hockey players here. That is just to make the team. That was what I described in option A. 0 scholarship, just to make the team. Those are the percentages. To get a scholarship, and there is no more full athletic scholarship. They'll offset it with merit or academic. But if somebody tells you they got a full athletic ride, they are lying to you. So to make an athletic scholarship possibility, those percentages are roughly half. To think we are part of this 0.5 to 1.5% of all of the athletes out there, in my mind, if your phone has not rang as a freshman or a sophomore in high school already, it's irresponsible on the part of mom and dad. I'm going to give you what I'd consider the most sobering statistic in this entire presentation. And before I do it, I want to make something very clear. I am not here to dash dreams. I am not here to burst bubbles. I am here simply to introduce an educational component to the recruiting process. And for some of you, you're already saying to yourself, I thought you were coming to tell me how I get recruited. I promise you, that is why I'm here. But we have to go through some steps first before we qualify ourselves to be recruited. I'm going to choose baseball from all those sports that I just mentioned. Not because I work in it, but because it's got the highest probability of success. There are 130,000 high school seniors playing baseball right now in the United States. And 9,800 of those individuals will go on to play Division I, II, III, and NAIA combined. That is 7.5% of the high school senior baseball playing population that will go on to be a freshman at a four-year school at any one of those four classifications. To be the worst Division III or NAIA player on the worst Division III or NAIA program, regardless of sport, in the entire country, will be your most remarkable athletic accomplishment to date. So the next time we have this regal attitude that we are better than D2, better than D3, better than NAIA, and we'll just show up and walk on if we choose to go to that school, you might want to think again, because it is going to be so hard. And for those athletes in front of me, the most challenging athletic jump you will ever make in your entire life, I don't care if you started on varsity as an 8th grader, is when you are an 18-year-old freshman playing against 20 and 21-year-old men and women adults who, under zero circumstances, is going to be shown up by some freshman that thinks they're a big deal. They are going to be out to destroy you and embarrass you. And when you roll onto that campus, and there are 3 spots available for that team, and one might go to a student that transfers in from a community college and is already a junior, having played 2 years of college athletics, and there are 29 other people trying out for that team, the percentages are already stacked against you. Here's the good news. If you chose that college for all of the right reasons, no different than the guidance counselors in this building or in any of the schools you attend, try to, at painstaking effort, get you to sit down and listen to what is important in the big picture, you will be on the right campus for the right reason. And if the sport goes away, I represent big leaguers who I at sometimes have to convince to retire. The sport will eventually go away. You're on the right campus for the right reason, and I promise you, you will have a great 4-year experience, and it will set the tone for the rest of your life. If you choose wrong, if you do not take the time to examine this process, and mom and dad, you are arrogant enough to ignore what your son or daughter wants. I already just proved to you they want to play D2, D3, and NAIA. You will be the one responsible for watching this line that started from they were 6 or 7 or 8 years old, this consistency in their life, and they hit college, and where it could have an opportunity to remain like this will look a lot more like this. EKG. That's on you, mom and dad. So let's get into how we get recruited, how we find that perfect place to play, and definitely that perfect place to enjoy a great 4-year experience. I said class participation. These were the first students here today. So do me a favor, read for me nice and loud what number 1 on your sheet says. There's no wrong answers tonight, but tell me what that means to you. Or any size, right? What's the size that's right for you? Your size might be different than his size, than her size, right? So, mom and dad, part of this exercise tonight is to help you have a qualified conversation with your son or daughter who inevitably answers every question like, I don't know, whatever, I don't care, because I have to go to Applebee's, okay, in Johnson City, Tennessee with 18 and 19-year-old baseball players. That conversation over lunch sounds exactly like the one that you're probably trying to have sometimes with them. Here's an easy way to ask it. I'm going to give you option A and option B for all the students. Option A, I'm the professor. And here's another thing that every child here, because at the end of the day, they're still children, should know. You think you could take a nap through 43-minute algebra? I'm sure you can. Not in college. Because I'm going to be a professor, speaking faster than I'm talking right now, up in front of the class on a whiteboard. And every single one of these seats are taken. There are 200 seats in here, and everyone is filled by a student. You've got a question in the upper left. I see you, but I'm going to ignore you because I've got to get through a 70-minute class. You're going to take 2, 3, sometimes 4 70-minute classes in a day. Your learning structure is going to be like nothing you have ever been a part of in your life. So here we are, 200 students, 70-minute class, professors up front. You've got a question, likely ignored, and if I choose to say, yeah, you got a question? You better be ready to have 199 faces turn around and stare at you. You better be on point with that question. That's option A. That's learning option A. Learning option B. Steve's going to get mad at me because I've got to walk all the way over here. Maybe this is the class. Maybe it's not even all the way to the back. Maybe it's halfway up. It's 15, it's 20, it's 30, it's 40 students. You have a question? Well, that's interesting. What do you think about that? Oh, well, and now we have a dialogue, okay? Which is the proper learning environment for your son or daughter, mom and dad? Well, I'm going to ask the students. Would you rather have option A, which is all of these, or option B, which looks a little more like that? Who wants option A? Who wants option B? We have another unanimous answer, and basically, these students just told me that they are looking for a school with less than, I'd say, 6,000 to 8,000 students. We'll call it 7,000 students. We are now exclusively identifying schools that have 7,000 students or less. Box 1's checked. Second point. Go ahead and read for me what number 2 says. ACT, SAT word. Proximity. What do you think that means? Yeah, how far? How comfortable? How far away from right here in Parkway do I want to be? Now, aside from the proverbial as far away from mom and dad as possible, not an acceptable answer. Well, maybe it is. But is that you want to head out to the California coast, go down to Florida? Are you jumping on the, 270 and taking it down to Memphis? Do you want to stay fairly local? Do you want to go out toward, I don't know, Springfield? Would you rather go across the Illinois River? Be out in that SIU Edwardsville area? That is a decision that needs to be made not just by the student, but rather by the family. And here's why. I get all the time, I want to get out of here. I want to get as far away as possible. I can go to Cali. I can go to Florida. I can go to Boston. And look, I hope it's great. I hope you get to do whatever you want. Does any student have an idea as to how far away they would prefer to be from here? Any ideas? Nobody has any idea how far they want to be? Since you answered the, at least number 2 question, do you have an idea as to how far you want to go? Not exactly. These are real answers. So I always say, if we got on a car ride, you had your cell phone charged at 100%, and the car leaves the house, and everybody realizes immediately that there are no chargers in the car. That battery is inevitably going to run out at some point. At what point on that drive, when the battery is dead, and that young man or woman has to look out the window and play a game that we played growing up called the license plate game, at what point are they ready to get out of that vehicle? Is that 2 hours? Is it 3 hours? Is it 5 hours? Now, while I say it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, I encourage you to take trips with your son, with your daughter. Have you driven about 4 hours to Chicago? Have you driven 4 hours to Kansas City? Have you driven 2 hours east, 1 hour north? Whatever. Put some actual context to, remember when we made that drive? Remember when we took that trip? Was it close enough? Was it far enough? And if they do want to go to Orlando or Los Angeles or Boston, you know what I would do? I would drag them out of bed at 4:30 in the morning. I'd get them over to Lambert by 5:30 or 6. I'd make them wade through that TSA line. I'd make them board that plane that, look, I got to fly back to New York and I'm flying United. I never fly United. It's the only nonstop that takes you into the city. They're going to have a layover in Chicago or Charlotte or Atlanta. And by the time they land to whatever the region of the school they think they want to go to, we're talking about a 12-hour travel day. They might not even be up enough to do something that night. Sure, they got the next day off, but the following day, they've got to come back and do it again. That's called coming home. We're doing the trip the other way, and they're not going to do it once or twice. They're going to do it 5 or 6, maybe 10 times in a year. Multiply that by 4, you're talking about 25 to 40 times over the course of your college experience. Not only might it be a little grueling and something that's not nearly as exciting, this prospect of being so far away from home, forget about how you're not going to be around friends or family, or on a moment's notice, you can't just get in the car and be home in a couple of hours. Your girlfriend calls and says, I just won Justin Timberlake tickets. We can get to the show tonight. We've got to be over to the arena, but it starts in 4 hours. You're out. Or, hey, I just scored Cardinals wildcard tickets. We can go tonight. I'm not saying you make your college decision off of things like that, but keep it in your mind, especially as a freshman when you're away from home for the first time, and your friends and family will basically be crossed off because they're just too far. Take them on that trip. Get them in the car. It doesn't even have to be the school of your choice. But I do believe you have to somehow conceptualize how far away. In my experience in giving these talks over 50 times in the last year and a half, it's usually about 3, maybe 3.5, 4 hours away. So for the purposes of our argument, we're going to call 7,000 student body or less 4 hours or less of a drive. Out here, you guys get to go 70. We don't get away with that in Cali. We have knocked down the first 2 enormous criteria to being recruited. Now, I'm going to admit to you in advance, I'm going to throw you a curveball on this next question. You're at a showcase. It's up in Kansas City. I don't care to the sport, but you paid to be there. It's a showcase. And sure, there might be some value to getting out of the bubble of the area, seeing some talent and some athletes from other parts of the country. There are obviously a bunch of schools there, obviously a ton of college coaches there. Let me remind you that very rarely that coach is the head coach of the program, because when it's 4th of July weekend and that coach has a family, 3 children under the age of 8, they already spend 19 hours a day on the field or at the office for 7, maybe 10 months of the year. There's no way that head coach is at that 4th of July event. It's an assistant coach. Oftentimes it might be a low-level graduate assistant coach who's simply a scribe sending information back to that coach who's recruiting you. But for the fairness of the point, the coach taps you on the shoulder and says, you know, you're a stud. You're the best player I saw out here. You just blew me away. We'd like to have you come visit our campus. We'd love to have you come meet our coaches, talk to our players. Who considers that being recruited, even though it's Division II, III, and NAIA? Am I and he the only 2 people that think it's being recruited? Because in my opinion, it's definitely being recruited. Forget about the fact that there's no athletic money attached. They are asking you to come and visit their school. They are seeking you out and have selected you over all of the other players. But the conversation looks something like this. Coach, that's great. I'm super excited. Can you tell me a little bit about your school? Sure. Well, we're located just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Okay, Pittsburgh. And we're not the biggest school, we're not the smallest school, but we have a student body size of about 12,000. Okay. Now, I couldn't even tell you how far of a drive Pittsburgh would be. We'll call it 10 hours. How much? 12. 12 hours away with 12,000 students. We're looking for 4 hours away with 7,000 students. But I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you would make that trip, because I don't want anyone on the spot. But I know for a fact there are too many people in this room that would pack up the SUV and be on the 70 heading east to go check out this school they're getting recruited at. That school is too big, that school is too far, and you have already set your son or daughter up for failure. We haven't even talked about academics. You have to be aware of what is out there. you have to be aware that that situation is actually going to happen. But more importantly, you have to have the discipline and have that strong-willed son or daughter to say, Coach, I am flattered that you think this much of me, but I don't want to waste your time because I already know that is a school that's too far and too big, but I appreciate the love. And because schools like that will have 6, 8, 10, 12 other schools in its conference, you can use that as a confidence chip that I'm good enough to play at that level, and there's a really good chance that there's a school within that conference that fits your 7,000 and 4-hour range. It's just a starting point, but it's something to learn from. Okay, show me the hands. Where are the students? Because we've got those two. Read for me number 3. What do you think that means? What do you want to study? You have any idea what you'd like to do? Aviation. Great answer. So aviation, that is so specific. It's great. I hope you are the greatest aviator ever. But there is always a little bit of a risk when we ask a 15 or a 16 or a 17-year-old individual what they want to do. Again, not trying to dash dreams. We just want to put some things into perspective. Because when they do get to college and they're in that 70-minute class and the course loads they take, which I'm assuming that for aviation, you need some sort of applied sciences. You need to probably have physics, maybe even some sort of chemistry, okay? Mathematics, analytics. Those classes can be amazingly challenging, and I'm not so sure that there are a whole lot of schools out there that specialize exclusively in aviation. Now, if that's what you want, you go to that aviation school, and by the time Thanksgiving rolls around, you come home, you sit there with mom and dad and the family, and between past the stuffing, you slip in, I want to change my major. And if that's what you're there for, you're probably looking at a transfer situation. Whereas if you go to a school that actually offers all of the majors that I just mentioned, which is going to be so many schools, the reality to go into aviation is probably going to require you to take another step after a 4-year traditional college anyway. But you give yourself a little bit of range to be protected in the event that that 70-minute, while we're trying to take these young men and women to adapt to a school and an environment that is 4 hours away from home with 7,000 strangers, and oh, by the way, they want to play sports, we are not giving enough credit to how amazingly overwhelming a task that could be. Have some flexibility. So in his example, having the sciences, having the mathematics, having the analytics, that is going to be at dozens of schools. I will argue that there are hundreds of schools from here to 4 hours away with less than 7,000 students to choose from that have those type of majors that actually exist. It's a buyer's market. Every single student in front of me can go to any college they get into and any school you can pay for. That is the combination. And if you think that the business out there is people like myself, agents, running up the prices of these amazingly overwhelming contracts we've seen, especially in baseball over the last couple of months, is a business? Absolutely. But I'll tell you another business that exists. It's called college education. I should revise one of my statements earlier about these kids are not necessarily going to get scholarships. In fact, every single one of these students is going to get a scholarship. In fact, they're going to get a full scholarship. Any idea who the scholarship is? Mom and dad. You are affording them the opportunity, more times than not, to go. Even if you're supplementing it with grants and financial aid and merit or academic scholarships, but you are still the scholarship. And when they go to that D2, D3, NAIA school, and there's no type of athletic money associated, you are truly paying for them to play. I hope that we are taking the time to identify the needs that they are answering to me in 35 minutes of what they want and where they want to go to maximize that 4-year investment. If this group in front of me was going to buy a $100,000 car, I don't care if that car was a Beamer, a Mercedes, a Range Rover, a Jaguar, and we walked into the showroom and said, I want to take it for a test drive, the conversation wouldn't go like this. Hey, Chief, toss me those keys. I'm going to take that X5 for a test drive. I'll be back in an hour. It wouldn't go like that. Hang on, sit down. Let me see your license. Do you actually have a DUI or speeding tickets? Do you actually even have the money to purchase this car? You're going to sign this piece of paper to make sure that you do bring it back in an hour. That is what's going to happen. There will be a legit pre-qualification to ensure that you are qualified to go take that car out for a drive. But we are going to go throw double that money to the first school that tells us that our son or daughter could play up outside of Pittsburgh at a school that's too big and too far. We got to keep the priorities in mind. Let's go number 4. Okay. I'm losing. I mean, it's a little bit blinding, and I apologize for the reflection off of my head. All right, I know you're over here. Okay, number 4. Read from me 4.
Offers extracurricular opportunities.
What does that mean for you? Give me an example.
For me, it would be like FCA or stuff like that.
Clubs, organizations, things that are outside the classroom. You nailed that answer. Good job. So, extracurriculars. Okay, what else is there to do aside from go to class, go play the sport, play Fortnite, and do something else? What else is there? Okay? Well, I can tell you that it doesn't necessarily have to be an internship, which for most schools, most majors, 100% prerequisite to graduate. So if you play, what sport do you play? You swim. So what season is that?
All year.
Okay. So, but in college, there's probably one where it's truly like either in the spring or the fall or the winter.
Basically all the time except for summer.
Okay. So if you're swimming and you get this internship your junior year, and they tell you you're going to work from 9 to 5, and it's going to be for those 3 or 4 months that semester, and you're going to get class credit, you might even get an A or whatever, I could tell you what you're not doing during that 3 or 4 month period, and that's swimming. That could be a real life, real world dilemma. I would hope that every mom and dad would say, well, you know, you are going to have to get this to graduate, so clearly go do the internship, and we'll put swimming on the back burner. But you have to think, not just 1 or 2 years ahead for these young men or women. You sometimes have to think 4, 5, 6 years down the road. It is challenging to do. And the person that your son or daughter was as a freshman, you know, has changed to be a sophomore, will change as a junior, and change again as a senior. I can say that if we were running through this Q&A with a freshman, we should do it again every single year because their answers could change. That's one example of an extracurricular. I'm going to give you a super easy one. Option A, option B for the students. Option A is 0 parental supervision. Your parents are nowhere to be found. It is just you and your pals. And you get to go skiing or snowboarding. You get to go down the mountain. You get to get off the mountain. You get to eat all the pizza you can stomach, all the junk food you can handle, and there isn't a parent around. It's just you and your friends. Skiing, snowboarding, cold weather, that's option A. Option B is still no parents, all the pizza, great junk food, but you're in a little bit of a warmer climate. You are not necessarily on Miami Beach, but you're outside, a day sort of like today. You and I both know it could snow tomorrow here, okay? It's April in the Midwest. You could get 77 today, beautiful day. You're not going to the beach or jumping into a pool, but you're outside, you're enjoying the weather. You could sleep in a round of golf. Maybe you just take the TV and the couch and just sit outside and enjoy it. That's option B. Those are your 2 choices for these young men and women. Who's going skiing and snowboarding? And then who's going to a little bit of a warmer weather climate. For all of these students, they just told me, from an extracurricular perspective, they would much rather be in a warmer climate than a colder one. Well, we are in as central part of the United States as possible. And you could go 4 hours south, or you could go 4 hours north. Well, for my money, the 4 hours south spring is going to start a lot sooner than the 4 hours north spring, and the 4 hours south fall will last a whole lot longer than the 4 hours north fall. Something as simple as that, when we are identifying schools that have less than 7,000 students, schools that are within 4 hours, schools that have those applied sciences, schools that are in a little bit of a warmer climate versus a colder climate, we are filling their interests, their needs, their requests. And we still haven't even talked about the sport. But what I will tell you we've done is pre-qualify ourselves to be recruited. No different than the car example I gave you, we have set ourselves up to be pre-qualified. Why? Because of number 5. I'll read number 5. Where are we going to go play? What is the right athletic level of competition for us? Well, I can tell you that if they didn't start calling you as a freshman or a sophomore, and even if they did, and you get that tap on the shoulder at the showcase at the school that's in Pittsburgh with 12,000 students, it's not going to come to you. What do I do for a living? One student, I said it in the first 3 minutes. What do I do for a living? I'm an agent. And while I manage the careers of 75 to 100 players, their day-to-day, I've got to know them in and out, whether we are negotiating a major league contract or whether I have a player who's actually in Tampa right now going to see Kiss, and I have to deal with Kiss's management to get them some tickets. I need to know what they like, what they want to do, how they want to do it, and stay on top of it. Well, for every student athlete, you too are now agents. But unlike me, with a larger client roster, you have a client roster of 1. Any idea as to who your client is? Yourself. You have to be your own agent. You're going to have to pick up the phone and call that coach. You're going to have to follow up that phone call with an email. And this will be your first real job interview. Because you're going to have to go get it. And because we live in a world where so many of those sharks are out there trying to steal your money, promising you that they will find a spot for your son or daughter to play, you've got to do it yourself. Because when that D2, D3 NAIA coach, who is very, very rarely full-time, they might be full-time on campus, but they're not full-time for being the coach. And they go into their inbox and they have 117 emails, and 110 of those are from companies, those third-party solicitors that are trying to charge you $3,000 because they're promising your kid will play in college. Well, I'm not saying those companies don't do their job, but they found that school in Pittsburgh. And when you say, I don't want to go to there, they're going to say, you hired us to find a school. We did our job. There's no returns. Buyer beware. You got to pick up the phone. I'll use my example. Hi, Coach Jones. This is Mark Leinweaver calling. I'm a junior at Yorktown High School in Yorktown, New York, and I'm very interested in Stonehill College. My family and I are planning on taking a trip up there the week of September 17th to tour the campus. I have a 3.1 GPA and I got a 1080 on my SATs. I'm the starting catcher on the varsity baseball team, and I play for the Shrub Oak American Legion team in the summertime. We're hoping that you have 10 or 15 minutes before or after practice, after our tour of the campus, to sit down and talk a little bit about the program. My cell phone number is, I look forward to hearing from you. Does that sound like a pre-qualified message? I think it does. No different than the car dealer that sat you down before you went for the test drive. You pre-qualified why you wanted to go to there. The size, the distance, what your back of your academic baseball card looked like, as well as your actual playing card. Maybe you slip in, I'm interested in going into aviation. You have made that job for the coach that much easier. You also separated yourself by sifting through not only the voicemails, because you're going to have to call that individual. And you don't just call the head coach, you call the associate head coach and the assistant coach and the graduate assistant coach. But you've got to call. Why? Because these kids, they can't communicate anymore. They can't look somebody in the face, hold a conversation, keep eye contact, and they certainly can't talk about something that they are not that interested in. Because let me show you what being recruited is going to look like. Steve, you're going to be mad at me again. I'm the coach. So, what'd you think of your campus tour? What do you think of Stonehill? What are you thinking about studying here? What do you actually want to get into when you get older? Hey, let me ask you, on the field, I don't care that you led the conference in goals scored. I want to know, what type of person are you? Are you the kind of kid that's going to show up 15 minutes early or 15 minutes late? Are you the kind of kid that's going to have your cell phone on during my meeting? Or are you going to be the responsible one that puts it off? Speaking of which, responsibility. Are you the kind of guy that's going to egg on that kid to jump off of the balcony into the pool at the keg party? Or are you going to be the one that says, hey, nothing good after midnight happens. Let's shut this down and let's get some rest. Those are the kinds of questions that a coach is going to interview you on in 5 minutes when you wrap up that campus tour and sit in front of them. And I assure you of this. You are not going to make any college team in that first meeting with that coach. You are going to have to try out with every single other player, regardless of what has been promised to you. And when I tell you, you will not make a team in that first meeting, but when I assure you, you can get cut from it like that, if you are not on, if you are not prepared to answer to those questions and have that type of conversation, I promise you, you will be crossed off that coach's list before you even step foot on campus. So to make that phone call, to send that email, not just to the first coach, but to 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And when they don't call you back or don't email you back because they are overworked and underpaid and understaffed and trying to manage their own team and their own program, you've got to do it again. And inevitably, they are going to get back to you. Thanks for reaching out, Mark. We are actually going to be around the week of the 17th. Before you even get up here, can you do me a favor? Can you send me a blank? And it's not transcript. What do they need to see? Film, video. And they don't need the propaganda set to graphics and music that you spent $1,000 on. They don't need that. This highlight reel. They need to see you play. Coaches coach. Coaches teach. They want to see practice. You're going to spend a lot more time on a practice field than you're ever going to spend in a game setting. Show them what you do. Mom and dad, you all have one of these fancy phones that have so much memory. You can take 30, 40, 50 seconds worth of video in real time and email it back to the coach, giving them exactly what they asked for. And when you say, yes, coach, of course I can send you a video. What would you like to blank? What is it? What is it? C. Because Coach A from School A is different than B, then different from C. Fill their void. Give them what they want. You pre-qualified why you should be going there. You pre-qualified that you are interested in attending there. And now you're giving them exactly what they asked for so they can make a determination of what type of athlete they could be getting. Because they are going to project 2 to 4 to possibly 6 years out, just like I suggested you do. That is being recruited. And if you are not prepared to have that discussion, if you don't start this process by finding the right distance, the right size, the majors, the minors, and an easy way to get a, what do you want to study? What's your favorite subject? What do you get your best grades in? Because if it's English and it's science, they're probably going to go into something in English and science. You don't have to declare a major at 17 or 18 or even 19. These kids are not supposed to know what they want to do today. There are plenty of adults in this room that still have no idea what they want to do. You have to take this preparation seriously, because as the process goes on, money is not going to be your enemy. Money's going to be a factor. Time will be your biggest enemy. Trying to manage their schedule versus your schedule to take that trip 4 hours south to that school that you have on your profile because you found 6 or 8 or 10 of them. You're going to go see 6 or 8 or 10 schools. And I promise you this will happen. You'll get there. You'll tour the campus, and you just won't like it. It's not for you. And then you've got this meeting with this coach scheduled at 4:15. In my opinion, don't waste the coach's time. You're already there. Knock on the door. Let them know that you appreciate the opportunity. But you tour the campus, and while I'm sure it's great for others, it's probably not right for me. That coach will respect the heck out of that kid. You also give that son or daughter who has so little experience in interacting with any real, out of their bubble people, a great opportunity to put their best foot forward. And who knows, you might wind up playing at a college that's the arch rival to that school you turned down. That coach might wind up coaching you one day in some summer league, or actually changes schools and winds up at a different program. Or you see them for 6 or 7 times a season as competitors, and then they wind up writing some recommendation for you to play somewhere doing something else. You never know. I promise you, sports, I don't care what level, little league to the big leagues, small world. That's how you handle that. That's how you get recruited. That's how you send a video. Again, just my opinion, but I don't think it's that far off. Okay, this is where the parents get involved. So can you read for me what A says?
Financially investing in academics, 10% to class tutor versus showcase/club team.
Okay, so everybody wants to spend money on that travel ball team. Everybody wants to spend money on that showcase. And look, I realize that in communities like this, you may have spent $10,000 over 3 or 4 years between travel ball costs, to get on the team, to go to this showcase, to pay for the lodging, to pay for the driving, to pay for the gas, to pay for the food. You grabbed up all those receipts and you said, whoa, 10 grand. We spent 10 grand. I bet you I'm being modest. I'm asking you to take 1,000 of the 10,000. 9,000 can still go to the white whale unicorn. But you take that $1,000 and you apply it to your son or daughter trying to become a better student, to get them from a 2.8 to a 3.2, to get them from a 1080 to a 1200. That's an unbelievably worthwhile investment. And is it really so terrible to get them smarter? And in a world where we all watch sports and we say, how do you make that bonehead play? And it's a mental mistake. You mean to tell me that there isn't a correlation between getting them smarter in the classroom and then making them better analytical thinkers on their fields? Absolutely, they go hand in hand. So you are doing a tremendous service by not going to that showcase again in Kansas City and rather having them in that SAT prep course for 3 hours on a Saturday. Because it leads to my second point. Can you read B? No, it's okay. You read B. You're involved, Jen.
Achieving academic and merit versus athletic scholarship.
I already told you that the athletic scholarship is probably going to be very, very challenging to attain. We as a group are part of the 97 to 99%. But in the example I just gave you, that $1,000 investment, watching that student go from the 2.8 to the 3.3, going from the 1080 to the 1280, school might see that and be like, whoa, this kid made that type of jump, this type of a commitment while they were swimming all year. That school might reward you with a $10,000 academic scholarship. These schools have so much academic money to throw around, it is unbelievable. So you just picked up yourself a $10,000 academic scholarship on a $1,000 investment. I get it, it doesn't come with the fancy sweatshirt that you can wear to Schnucks to, show off to all your friends that your kid plays at this school. No sweatshirt included. But it definitely takes $10,000 off the bottom line. Also mention merit. Now for me, there isn't a simpler way to get involved in the community to achieve a merit-type scholarship than volunteering with special needs children. I'll say something about special needs kids. The one common denominator that they all have is they did not choose to be special needs. There are special needs children in this school. There are special needs children throughout this region. And they all love sports like you do. They have leagues specifically for them. And they don't need the $2,500 pity, I'm going to write this check and donate so deep down I can get a tax deduction type of support. They need able-bodied students like the ones in front of me. They need volunteers to be coaches, to be referees, to be organizers, sometimes even to be teammates. And you want to put something on a resume? You want to put something on an application to a college? Put something like that you did that for 6 hours a month. You didn't do it in hopes that the school gives you $7,500 in merit money. You do it because you might learn a little something about yourself, and you'll certainly learn something about somebody that at the end of the day, you didn't know that well and were probably uncomfortable around. Because what do you think college is? You're going to send these kids who never left this bubble 4 hours away with 7,000 strangers? You better get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Special needs. Easy. And it's right here in this community. So that school just rewarded you with a $7,500 scholarship for merit. You're up to $17,500. That's some pretty good money. Scholarship money's out there. It just might not necessarily be athletic. Okay, so for C, and I think this is probably the one point that is most important in this entire presentation. Could you read for me C, please?
Getting cut doesn't mean collegiate athletic career is over.
You get cut from that team, it does not mean it's over. I promise you. And here's why. You have two choices should it not go your way. Because, as I said before, you're 18 up against 21-year-olds. You might be completely overmatched athletically. There are 29 kids trying out. There's 3 spots. You just couldn't make the cut. Keeping up with that level of competition, you're out. You've been cut. You dive for a ball, you pull your quad, you're unable to actually participate for 4 of the 6-week tryout. Some kid from Granite City showed up, went absolutely off, did amazing in the tryout. It comes down to 1 spot. You, who was unhealthy for most of the tryout, or them, who was just amazing. Well, I'll tell you what, talent plays. It plays in the big leagues when you see the star players get a day off, they get replaced by the backup, but the next day the star player is back in the lineup for a reason. The talent plays. In that situation, the talent's going to play. And if the shoe was on the other foot and you were the kid from Granite City that went out and did everything right and you found out you got cut for some kid that didn't practice for 4 weeks, you'd be pissed too. Or that coach that's coaching that team, you know, the one that you met 12 or 18 months earlier, their lifelong ambition, more times than not, is probably to remain in that program. They are trying to move up the ladder too. So they take the associate coach's job at Missouri State. They take the job at Northeastern in Boston. And they're gone. And the new sheriff in town, well, they run a different ship. And you might not jive with that program. You and that coach might not get along so well. You might not like them, and more importantly, they might not like you. And all of a sudden, you're on a campus that you thought you were going to play at, you're out. So you have 2 choices, like I said. Choice A is to do, unfortunately, what so much of our society has become, and that is make an excuse, blame someone else, take 0 accountability to your role in that tryout. Sure, you could take that route. Or you could take this one. The day after you get cut, Coach, you got a second? Yeah, sure, come on in, Mark. Well, listen, I'm not here to fight you. I'm sure you had your reasons as to why I couldn't make this team as a player, but I need to let you know that this sport has been in my DNA since I was a kid. I love this game. It is so much a part of me, and I just want to be a part of it. So if you need me to volunteer for free, you want me to keep the stats, manage the book, you want me to set up the equipment before and after practice, I don't care what it is, you give me a task and I will do it. There isn't a coach at the D2 and D3 and NAIA level in this country that's turning that kid away. Why? Because they're underpaid, they're understaffed, and they're absolutely underappreciated. They are going to take that eager kid who wants to be there, to be involved, and do it for free. That kid is going to become a part of that program. And for mom and dad, I talked about that EKG example. You now have a son or daughter on a campus 4 hours from home with 7,000 strangers who now have friends by default and a surrogate parent basically looking over them. Opposed to those friends that you don't know that they're going to make, you know, that trip they're going to take to the mountains or to the warm weather. And I mentioned extracurriculars before. They're going to get involved in their own types of extracurriculars, and the smart parent knows what I'm referring to. To be involved with that program, even as a volunteer non-player, I can't explain to you enough how valuable it is. Because when you fast forward that young man or young woman's life 11 months, they come home, they get bigger and faster and stronger and smarter that summer because they were around a program, around coaches for an entire year. Do you think their chances are better or worse when they decide they're going to try out again as a sophomore, opposed to the kid that made excuses, blamed everyone else, took their ball, went home, disappeared for 11 months, and then came back and tried out the next year? I'd like to think that the kid that was around the program and tries out a year later has a better chance of making the team as a player than the kid that disappeared. And you will find, in my example, as someone who played college baseball but now works in pro sports and hires people for a living, I'm a former player, but I also broadcasted for the basketball or football team and worked and wrote for the newspaper. I kind of covered it all when I wasn't an athlete, but when we look for people to hire at our agency in school, I look for the player who played in high school and worked for the college team, not necessarily the college athlete. Because if I were to ask any one of these students or an auditorium filled with kids, who wants to work in sports? I don't care if you want Mo Zalak's job, if you want to be the broadcaster, if you want to run Goldschmidt's social media campaign. The numbers are at record highs of individuals that want to work in sports. And that career path starts by taking that. You get cut, you go knock on a door and you volunteer. That, for the most part, is this presentation. We've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. There is one thing I wrap up every presentation with, and it has absolutely nothing to do with anything we talked about tonight. I'm going to ask Jennifer to start passing these around, but in the interim, I'm going to cover a couple of points that I almost always forget, and so I jot them down. They're called quick hits. I'll make this last point, and then I will stay until the last question is asked. We can either open it up in a forum, or I will stand here at the end of this stage and I will answer any question. The bottom of your sheets have a website. That website is my website. I have nothing to sell you. Okay? I have nothing to sell you. Mentors for College brought me in to give this informational lecture tonight, but I travel 7.5 months a year. I flew in from New York. I'll fly back. I'm in cars all the time. I respond to emails. I respond to phone calls. I'm happy to just give you my 2 cents. That would be beyond this evening. But when I tell you the amount of remarkably worthwhile information, especially under the frequently asked questions section, including something that links to the NCAA website, that if you want to do anything that we've talked about tonight, you actually have to register with the NCAA. And if you want to do it at a D1 or a D2 level, they're going to charge you $90. Take a look at those frequently asked questions. Okay, go measure your talent. You don't have to go 4 hours away to go measure your talent. Go to any one of the colleges that would be nearby within 45 minutes or an hour. Because that D2, D3 NAIA school that's 25, 30 minutes from here, it's going to look a lot like the school that's 4 hours away. You need to be honest. You need to put eyes on these programs. You need to go see how big and fast and strong those athletes are. And you got to be honest and say, I think I can play here, or maybe this is a little bit beyond my pay grade. What might a college coach ask you? And you should be asking them. I gave you a couple of quick examples, but on that frequently asked questions, I put a ton of questions of what you should ask, what they should ask, maybe financial aid related questions that you could be taking advantage of while you're going on your campus tour. Just a ton of questions. I'll just play D2 or D3. I think we've covered how hard those teams will be to make, and also the video. Don't waste your money on it. We figured out a way to get that coach to see your son or daughter in literally real time. And playing on a college team, it's a full-time job. It really is. I mean, to think that because it's D2 or D3, it's not going to require that much time or effort. Keep in mind, everyone's here because they want to be an athlete. Everybody wants to transition to that school 4 hours from home for the first time with 7,000 strangers. But you are going to play 6 games, or at least practice 6 days over a 7-day week. You're going to do that for maybe 6 or 7 weeks in the fall. Then you're going to work out throughout the winter. The captains will run these mandatory, we're going to lift. And then you're going to come back in the spring and you might play 40 games in 55 days. And they're not all going to be at home. They're going to be on the road 2 or 4 or 6 hours away. This ain't Alabama. They're not going to give you some tutor to take on the trip. You are going to be responsible for yourself. And so to try to manage that workload, those 70-minute classes, to try to adjust to the social aspect of college, to do all of that while playing for the worst Division III team as maybe the worst player on that team, it's a full-time job. It might not be so fun anymore. When you're at spring break and you're out with the team and you're a freshman, so you're probably not playing much, and you're doing all the grunt work, like, I don't know, carrying the equipment or running down the street to get the sandwiches while your friends are spiking volleyballs and high-fiving each other on the beach down in Daytona. Totally different experience. Might not be what you thought it was going to be. Keep that in mind. And then the showcases thing, look, I'm not anti-showcase. I think they have value, providing that you get out of the bubble, you get a chance to see some other competition from some other parts of the region. But I think the number one thing with the showcase is, if you are going to spend your money to be exposed to coaches, I would say to the showcase administrator, can you send me a list of the schools that are expected to attend? And if that individual says no, buyer beware, I would go on and go to somewhere else. But most good ones will say, these are the 20 schools we're expecting to attend. Well, go do some research. Do what we went through 1 through 4. Find of those 20 the ones that might fit 7,000, 4 hours, the applied sciences, and maybe in a little bit of a warmer climate. You might only find 6 schools, but that is the schools, or those are the schools you're going to target in on. And instead of watching your son and daughter at another showcase that you've seen them play a million times, mom and dad, your job is to try to see and earmark where those coaches might be. Because when the event ends, they are going to sprint to their car to get out of there. So if you could say to your son or daughter, there's the coach from that school, get over to there and introduce yourself. Well, I got news for you. The coaches at the college level want to hear from one person, the athlete. The person they want to hear least from, the parent. And the person that's in the middle is usually that third-party organization that I referenced before. So if you could put your son or daughter to make an introduction to a coach following a showcase that you've already pre-qualified that school and can have that type of conversation in the moment with that coach, you are probably so much further ahead of the game than everybody else that it might actually lead to a, send me your schedule. I'd love to come watch you play. That is maximizing your showcase dollar. Okay, we'll conclude on this point. I know we only have like 5 or 6 students here, but I want those 5 or 6 students to look at that photo that they are holding in their hand. And I want you to really think about what you would hear if that student were to walk down the hallways of the school you attend. How would that kid get described? Now, I know you wouldn't necessarily describe them as what you might shout out, but how might your teammate, how might the kid 3 lockers down, what would they say about that kid? Zero filter. Don't worry about mom and dad sitting next to you. Describe for me how that kid would be called. Any guesses? Go ahead, start. Right here. How would you describe that kid? There's no judgments. Yeah, just, not you, you heard it. Somebody says about this kid, boy, look at this kid. He's fill in the blank. Not capable. Okay, give me physical characteristics. I know you want to say it, but you're being not athletic. So he's not athletic. Anybody else? What do you guys got? What does he look? Give me a physical characteristic. He's fat. Thank you. I've been waiting on that one. We're talking about a fat, non-athletic, what else? Dorky, little geeky, right? So look at this fat, unathletic, dork geek. Check out that jacket. What's the deal with that half shirt? How about those shorts? Who wears those big Coke bottle glasses? Get yourself some contacts. That kid hears those types of words, boy or girl, down these hallways every day, down the hallways of every single school, and even down to elementary school in this country every single day. It's called bullying. And when I tell you that this in my hand is no longer a cell phone, but rather a weapon, you need to take this as seriously as if I were pointing a gun or holding a flame. This is a weapon. This, because of Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, photos, texts. This is literally destroying not only the fabric of our society, but the insides of every individual that looks like that kid you are holding in your hand. Bullying is a real problem, and it is an epidemic. And there are television shows being made about that epidemic. 13 Reasons Why. If you haven't seen it, the ending is not a happy one. You do not have to watch that show. You have to open up your computer or scroll through the news on your phone to see that these young men and women who are being bullied are taking the most extreme of measures and making the most heart-wrenching of decisions. You are student athletes. Thus, you are leaders. Thus, you have social responsibilities. If you're going to be a leader in the pool or on the court or on the field, then you better be a leader outside of it and protect that kid in these hallways, outside of this building. Your job is to be part of the solution, not the problem. So your cool, hip teammate or your buddy from down the street who is making fun of that kid, who is abusing that kid, who is bullying that kid needs to be protected, and it's your job to do it. You want them to come to your games, to your meets, and cheer you on. It is your job to assist them to get through this. It is not hard to sit in the cafeteria with him or her. It is not hard to say hello when you see them at the movies. It is not that tough. You're here because you want to play in college. Well, sadly, there is this rite of passage. There is this, I'm a freshman, so the seniors are going to pick on me. They're going to haze me. They're going to tease me. They're going to bully me. It's going to happen on that campus 4 hours from here with 7,000 strangers. I assure you it will. And when you are laying in bed with no friends and no family around, and you're going to think to yourself, why is this happening? Maybe you should recall how you treated people in this building and this community, because it's called karma. You have to take the bullying, the name calling, the texting, the Instagramming, the tweets, all of it so seriously. It's a weapon. Please be part of the solution and help end the problem.